welcome back to another episode of Talking Chaos. I'm the Condor, of course. It's awesome. I'm a bird still. Until we remedy that problem, I'll just keep notifying you guys. I'm joined this week with Wolf, the lycanthrope himself, the great lycanthrope, Wolfman.
Yet again.
Yep.
Roped in another time.
Kill
me once, shame on me. Kill me twice. Well, fine. Right.
I just really like that word, frankly. I can't get enough of it. I looked up misanthrope the other day, so this is just
That's a good one.
Yeah.
We a bit of a one myself.
So we're back again for another episode, another week. We're doing it. Woo.
Fuck yes.
We have a new topic, as always, is the condition of this show. Every week we try to take something and we tear it to pieces, in a sense. Squeeze out the juice that can be squoze.
Or at least, give it a rough slap around the palms and sniff it.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes we do this.
Enjoy the pulp a little bit. Get the rind in.
Anyway, this week
we're going to be talking about legend, becoming legend. The concept of legendary people.
And of course, people specifically, right? Not to disclude legendary events, legendary creatures, right? The supernatural is kind of getting mildly excluded, right? No Loch Ness monsters, no other cryptids, no Bigfoots.
We're going to try to concentrate on people that we've all agreed are real.
Right. People, not acts of nature, not,
We might talk about some people you could argue have never existed, but a bunch of people have unanimously agreed that they have.
Sure, there's either some proof or quite a large, ridiculous general consensus that this person or people were real and did these things. Sure.
I did want to talk about a couple things real quick. Patreon, if you guys want to check out sort of more in-depth stuff that we're talking about this episode, go to patreon.com/talkingchaos and check out the $10 tier. If you can't afford the $10 tier, check out any tier. Frankly, we'll take any denomination of your money.
That's true.
As much as you're willing to give us, I will take it.
No, it gets a little more personal. It gets a little more rowdy, a little more foul, a little more fun, a little more detailed.
Reckless.
Sometimes a little more meandering.
Yeah.
It's there, right?
Well, this is Talking Chaos. We're going to end up meandering.
So it's appropriate, right? A little bit of Brownian motion by a conversation. Sure.
Yeah, and some Murphy's Law happening, too.
Yeah, of course, right?
But we're going to be talking about legendary legends, people that have become legend. I wanted to talk to you about, what is legend? What does that mean to you?
To me, legend to me is it's a couple different things, right? You can start getting a little rules Larry and breaking it down. Does legend mean something known worldwide? Does legendary mean something known to a culture or a nation? Right. And I argue it has various tiers, right? You've got worldwide legends, cultural legends, personal legends.
Let's you and I try to
at a base level, regardless of whatever tier of acknowledgement the legend has, a legend in and of itself does something that is beyond normal king, right? They're doing something extra. They're being beyond human.
Extra is definitely the word I might use.
Definitely what people either aspire or are horrified by what these people have done. They are legendary. They did something beyond what most normal people ever accomplish in their life or even dream of thinking of as a real thing.
Yep.
And some of them are slightly mythological, right? Some of it, even though this is person-based and not just pure mythologically based legends, some of these figures are in fact so legendary that we don't necessarily know a ton about the real person involved.
Right. About their character.
Sure.
Well, maybe not their character, but their personal life, their relationships, etc. Sometimes it's their character alone that endures the test of time.
Right, and part of that has to do with when the legend came about, right? How much written history was there? Did people bother writing about these things? And of course, in the modern era, we have a dearth of data We have a ton of information on all sorts of things you would ever want to know about or not want to know about.
Right,
so it's a
right.
lot easier to maintain legends from a more modern aspect of the past few hundred years, where legends of people that are older, might exist beyond. And of course, we're limited to our understanding of legends. And
I want to play a bit of a game.
Sure.
We're gonna do.
I like games.
We're gonna do five things. Okay.
5 things. All right, I can count that high. I got a hand free.
You're gonna start us off by suggesting the name of somebody that you imagine that you imagine the public has agreed is legend.
Okay.
And I'm gonna try to refute the legend that is.
All right, you're gonna try and burst the bubble of the legendary figure.
Right, we're gonna do 5 each, and we're gonna take turns doing it.
Okay.
And sort of see how this goes, because I think that's the most effective way to go through the
I can
top
use
5.
people that I've written down for talking points and stuff later, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, sure.
We might end up crossing and glancing the talking points as we discuss this.
To a point, right. But we'll try and circle and talk on.
Maybe let me know with the hand signals if I'm going too far.
Sure. If we really want to get into it
Fourth
later.
wall break. So who do you got?
All right. First legendary figure that I've got that I'm going to present to you is Bruce Lee.
Oh, yeah.
Bruce Lee is a fucking legend. I don't know whether to believe or disbelieve even half of the shit I read about this man on the internet. One of the other things that I've actually done the work on and actually found older text and written things that were attached to film documents of him actually being filmed doing one-fingered push-ups, kicking heavy bags over buildings, just doing crazy inhuman feats of just superhuman awesomeness. Bruce Lee, and he's not even probably even the best martial artist that was out there. He was just the most famous and got heavy on film. So there's hidden dudes out there that practice probably harder than him and that are even crazier. And that's what really blows my mind is he just became the figurehead and brought martial arts out and helped bring martial arts to the forefront of everyone's knowledge. Sure. So he became a legendary martial arts figure.
I genuinely have very little holes to poke in that suggestion other than the time. I might argue that to qualify as a legend, and I may bring this up more than once.
A little too modern.
Yeah, it might be too soon.
So then you might rather look at his predecessor, Ip Man, who has had several movies made about him as well. That Ip Man might be the more legendary figure as opposed to Bruce Lee.
That's probably more apt.
Bruce Lee is more of a modern Marvel, film legend, not necessarily a historic legend. That's kind of one of those weird gray areas in determining legend or not.
And we might bring that up again.
I still argue Bruce Lee legend, though.
I think
it's old enough now.
87% with you.
Yeah, it's hard to argue. Dude's pretty impressive. All right, anyway, yours. Hit me with your first here.
Tesla.
Dude, you got me. That's one that I'm speaking of previous episodes. I'm a fanboy of Tesla. Nikola Tesla was the shit. Man had so many. He was well, not to name drop because I'll bring another one up here soon. I'll bring the name up again here and we'll reference it then. But Tesla was so far ahead of his time with how he thought about things. He was literally solving problems that didn't exist yet with his theorems and his ideas. He was thinking of wireless information transfer and wireless electrical transfer before it was even needed or wanted by anything. I believe so. His apartment was raided right after he died by government authorities for all of his works and papers, a bunch of his other personal
ended
stuff.
Up with all this stuff.
Right. There's a whole bunch of conspiracy around him, which helps with his legendary status. Is that there's so much mystery about it.
That's what I was about to bring up.
The movie The Prestige, where they literally bring him into a goddamn magic movie, where his science was so out there that it followed Arthur C. Clarke's theorem of any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Right? His technology was so advanced, he was doing effectively magic. The man is a legend. If only for the fact that he relentlessly pursued it and refused to be stood down and stuck by his guns and fucking did it till the end and refused to fucking break down. And he fought people like fucking Edison, that slimy scumbag whose museum I really enjoyed. Yeah, Westinghouse and all sorts of other people. And just he was super the underdog and just
So you have no holes to poke. in that suggestion.
I mean, other than you could argue he was just like a pseudo-industrial capitalist, and that kind of makes him a pig, maybe. But like, I got nothing.
That's fair.
It's like a cheap shot, right? Like, I feel dirty talking about it. Like,
but I'm happy that you brought it up.
But like, I don't know his personal political beliefs, so maybe he wasn't. Maybe he was the party comrade. Maybe he wasn't. I don't know.
Right?
But like, sure. I really adore
If he was
Nikola
a communist
Tesla.
dude, I would love that.
He's got a really bitchin' bust made out of copper somewhere at Michigan State that I remember fondly. I smoked a doobie by it once and stared deep into his soul-piercing eyes.
That was
Nikola Tesla.
Knowledge.
Nikola Tesla, I would actually agree with you. He's pretty legendary. I'd give that a solid 90% plus. Sure.
Okay. What's your what you got? Number 2?
Leonardo da Vinci.
Oh yeah.
I'd argue that man is super legendary.
Yeah.
Because Da Vinci's had like umpteen movies made about his works. His pictures and diagrams were like...
And he fits something the other two also fit, which is that there are stories that you hear that could be rumor, they could be real. You're completely who the fuck knows? Yeah, he might have been gay. Sure, Mona Lisa could be a picture of himself.
He was
we don't
such
fucking know.
A Renaissance man and so well executed that he almost breaks the cliche of jack of all trades, master of none.
Oh yeah.
The man was almost a master of any trade he picked up.
Oh yeah.
It was disgusting. And part of it was the fact that he lucked out and he got apprenticed to the Medicis and like was funded by them and some shit. So he
was
had
funded
like
by the church too.
Disgusting. The Medicis owned the church. I'm pretty sure one of their kids
at that point power was church.
Right. If I remember my Assassin's Creed gameplay right, when it was set there in Venice, the Medici family was in charge of the church.
So many references to the previous episode.
If I don't, then I might be wrong. I was never good at history, sciences, or making. But anyway, yeah, dude, he was super back. Had been on a helicopter, a submarine, tank. Not to mention, he was a beautiful painter. He has all sorts of great medical diagrams that he sketched out and drew that he could get away with because he was privileged and get away with sketching corpses and shit. Like he
at the
really
time,
was
that stuff was really
at the time he took advantage of such a unique position that not a lot of people could take advantage of that wanted to, and he was the man of the time. Literally, like you talk a Renaissance man, Leonardo da Vinci. Like, come on,
right? He's the guy.
Yeah.
No, I fuck. He's old enough. He's been dead long enough. He fits all the check marks. I'm 100% in agreement with you. That's legend.
I feel like he could give Rick a run for his money, like
what's trying to think here. I didn't really fully think out my list.
That's okay. It's 2 for right? You're on your second one?
I'm tracking it. I got it.
Okay, cool.
I got it. Trying to think here. Washington? Yeah, we'll go with that. He's somebody I really look up to.
And that's where I'm going to argue no. America's too young. The American heroes we think of as legendary are in fact just recent historical figures, and most other countries will laugh at us. And we have got
the same guy that suggested Bruce Lee?
Yeah, but Bruce Lee's a legend, dog.
Yeah, but everybody knows who George Washington is.
In America.
I think there are people in other countries that very easily know who George Washington is.
Potentially, but I argue that that's because their educational systems are probably a little more world aspected than ours. But I get he's got some mythos, right? The cherry tree, the wooden teeth, the quaint wife.
That's what I'm talking about. The stories, man.
Mythos, sure. And I would argue he was a cultural legend. Right, and that's where he lies. I wouldn't argue worldwide legend. I'd argue people might know.
We didn't make that discrepancy.
I know, but
I'm splitting hairs, but you're probably right.
Influential, sure. Larger than life, possibly. Dude made it on some currency. It's definitely worth a note. I'll give you like a solid 65 to 70% legend.
You're not even happy that you're giving me that.
I'm not. No. If you guys can see my face, that was a very tough gift. I didn't want
the level of disdain can be heard in the audio.
It's just, I like him. He's a cool figure, but But maybe I'm wrong, right? Because I did read some story in college about the Nasarima tribe, which, to let you all in on the joke, is American spelled backwards. And it was a funny little anecdote written in the perspective of analyzing Americans of like the 1950s persuasion as like a remote, isolated tribe, the Nasarima tribe. Right, and it talked about our rituals and weird abstract, like technological terms, which made everything sound weird, but was really just talking about people shaving and getting perms and going to hospitals, and our leader that hacked down a cherry tree that couldn't tell a lie. And that's when I realized when I was reading it that, oh, fuck, this is us. I'm an idiot. And, like, sure, I guess in that aspect, yeah, he did come across kind of legendary because it even makes a point, like, when looking at us from an abstract sense. So, sure, potential legendary figure. If you look at Civ 5, he is our leader in Civ 5. So, yeah, I guess you're right. He is. That actually comes me up to, like, 75%. He's our leader in Civilization 5. So, yeah, Washington might be kind of legendary. Sure. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, bump me up a little bit.
You're next. Third pick.
Oh, yeah, what was your second? My number 3. Legendary figure. Yeshua ben Yusuf. I'm talking about the Son of God himself, Jesus Christ. Legendary figure.
I wondered when this was going to come up, and as far as legendary figures go, there's very few that you can pull out that trump the J card.
Right. I mean, if you're going to pull out the opposite number just to prevent us from dumping them, if we want to, we can write them down as both of our number 3s and lump this all together, and we can both also talk about Muhammad and Buddha if you want. Right, and lump it all together.
Yeah.
Quick religious diatribe.
That's fair.
All right, we'll mark that down
totally
as both
fair.
of our number 3s, and we'll just lump those out of the way real quick. And
Abraham, just to check all the religious boxes.
Sure, right, not to discriminate against anyone, right? Judeo religions, if you want to talk about Judaism, if you want to talk about Islam,
right.
If you want to talk about like Buddhism, if you want to talk
all
about
of them have
Shinto,
their religious
if you want to talk about Zoroastrianism, if you want to talk about Satanism,
right.
They're all worthwhile, right? Whatever religion is, I don't discriminate. These certain figures have a little bit more public appeal and public knowledge, which lends to their legendary status, I would argue.
Oh yeah, especially when you've got an entire country dedicated to one of them. A legal city-state.
Sure. Yeah.
Like Vatican City's got to be one of still the most wealthiest countries on their own.
They're weird. They got a bunch of legend all by themselves. It's a weird individual city-state in the middle of Italy that has their own rules and their own police force and its own religion. I told you about this
recently, and I think it's worthwhile mentioning because I think it just adds to the like legend part of all this.
Okay.
You brought up Christ.
Sure.
And I always thought about the
Jesus of Nazareth.
Right.
Yeah.
I always thought about his relationship with Judas, and I heard once from somebody who went to theology school that Judas was his best friend and betrayed him at his request. It wasn't something that he did maliciously.
I mean, you want to talk straight, like old school dogma, almost. I would argue most Christian, definitely my early Catholic upbringing, argued that Judas Iscariot is in fact labeled as a traitor. He sure was definitely one of the closest of Jesus' apostles, right? He was
this
one of the
legendary
12.
Story was that he wasn't, and that it was all done at the request of somebody.
That's arguing personal motives from vague historical figures from archaic diagrams.
But that just adds to the legendary nature of all this.
Sure.
But if you're arguing about that, then you're talking about somebody who qualifies.
I mean, yeah, dude. It immediately escalates everything to a messianic and God-esque status where you're almost talking about like Zeus and the Titans or anything else where you're talking about like a son of God or you're talking about a chosen
divine
prophet
being,
where like Muhammad brings his people to knowledge and like
divine being I think is a fair vocabulary word to use.
Sure. But yeah, like Buddha was actually a dude, right? Siddhartha Gautama. Right, who then transcended and became Siddhartha Gautama. My pronunciation is probably awful, and I apologize immensely.
I think it's Siddhartha.
It's Siddhartha, right? But Gautama, I think, was his last name.
I'm not even going to try.
Yeah, last time I remember getting schooled about that was freshman year in high school. Someone gave an assembly in like an open common wing. Fuck yeah. Right, and then like my brief stint with Muslim faith was when I was in boot camp, because you got out of being in the compartment when you went to religious services. So I went to Catholic church, and then I went to Muslim services as part of like a cross faith learning program.
So that you had less to do.
Yeah. So I didn't have to get yelled at and do push-ups or clean. I went and learned about the Muslim faith. It was actually pretty interesting. The imam was totally about it. He didn't care that I was there for like a studious aspect. Like I was non-disruptive.
I have a job to do.
Yeah,
Nevertheless,
like he didn't care, right? Like as long as I didn't disrupt, he didn't give a shit. Even when he talked about like genies and stuff and brushed his teeth with a chewed-up twig, I didn't say anything. I was good.
Number 4.
It is my turn again. Fuck, yeah, because we lumped stuff together. All right.
Yep. It sort of made sense, too, though.
All right, I'm going to shift gears and go from positive legends to negative legends. And I'm going to say, tell me Jack the Ripper isn't legendary.
I knew this was going to make the list, because I had it.
Right? It pinged as you were thinking.
In my head, it was... that name had came up like 10, 15 minutes ago.
That is cross-continental terror, my friend. That is across an ocean worth of, like, did he come to America? Did he stay in England?
Well, and you're talking
Never got caught. Like,
you're talking about fucking multiple countries doing multiple forms of entertainment about this character.
Dude, tons of media, tons of actual research, tons of all sorts of shit. It's nuts the amount of money and hullabaloo and academia that's been generated
and this
around
was,
just them sets of
1888.
That sounds right. I don't know, but that sounds close. I'm whatever. Correct us.
I'm with you. I'm like,
please God, email us.
65% sure. I'm hoping all the diehard Jack the Ripper fans don't kill us. Get it?
Yeah. Right. At some point, we'll do a serial killer groupie episode, and we'll talk about our worries of that. But
right, no, but that was actually gonna segue me into my 4th pick, which is...
So you got nothing against Jack? You're saying that's legendary?
I absolutely, hands down, agree with you.
Right on.
Just the speculation involved,
just
and
getting
how long it's been.
Getting you to state it out loud for posterity. No big deal.
Points on the board.
Points on the board. It's not that we're keeping track, but I'm winning.
Whose owns it anyway? The points don't matter.
Right. Yeah.
Manson.
Mm.
And number 4 for me.
Definitely in America. Yeah. I got, this might just be personal bias. I got mad beef with Charlie Manson.
I do too.
I think he was such the most, like...
You get it, right? Like, our culture
ever.
Totally,
yeah, we do obsess over him. He is fucking legend. That is, like, the icon that represents, like, the cult and satanic panic thing that swept the nation for, like, a couple decades there. Yep. So, yeah... I reluctantly will give you, like...
sort of weird pseudo-religious McCarthyism that was happening at that time. But
also, like, his life is too well documented for me to call in much legend, because his life, his crimes, and then his time in jail is all documented. So, like, he's... The why, though, still is
a question that people get into a lot, and that might be enough legend.
There's a bit of a why mythos involved, but to me, that's like it's like a 60% legend, right?
Okay, fine.
Yeah,
I take it back, and I'll sub in a different one.
Okay, who are you gonna sub in?
Zodiac.
Okay, I'll give you that. That's straight legend, and that's just because
nobody knows how the fuck
mythos endures. There's umpteen theories, no one knows. That is one that I'll absolutely give you, and that's if only for the open-endedness and the mystery involved. For sure, much more legendary.
You asked for less detail, and I gave you the...
Yep, no, you're correct. Yeah.
And the codes, a bunch of them are still unsolved.
I thought
like a third of them are still unsolved.
Okay.
I think of the 5 to 7 that they had, I know there's at least one that is remaining unsolved.
At some point in my mind, though, based on that case, I would have almost expected him to start writing gibberish just to fucking just because he was at that level of tweaking the cops' noses and just sending them one that was completely garbage that they would waste time on forever and had nothing valuable in it.
Poop smear a piece of paper.
Yeah, was that number 4? Okay.
Oh my god, that would have been brilliant. This guy's insane.
So rough. Alright, so bit of a gear shift here on the number 5. We've talked about legends that have become legendary simply through what they did, and then their stories kind of got picked up, passed around, spread around, and they became legend through pretty much non-specific works of their own. Some of them might have wanted to become well known.
Who are you talking about?
But the idea of what if a legend was forced on a people?
Oh,
what
yeah,
if you
yeah.
make something legendary? And I'm going to put forth the Slender Man as my number 5.
I totally accept it. Yep.
Because there's something that was birthed on an internet forum that I knew people that subscribed to something awful when I was in college, right? And like I lurked on there and got to read stuff because we all shared sign-ins and shit. And, like I'd hang out in the rooms and like got in on some really weird early dark internet like humor. And not super early because I was like 2006, 2007 when I was into it. Mm-hmm. So like mid-internet age, right? The internet was around for a while, but it wasn't still like exploding into pop use because we didn't all have a computer in our pocket.
No, but I was following the same
But yeah,
stuff.
like
I heard the Slender Man rumors early.
We all kind of watched it get birthed, and we watched it happen. We watched the creepypasta forums get made and birthed, and a whole bunch of other weird, shittier versions of stories get made. But that one endured because a whole bunch of people spent time creating it and pooling technical skills and like their acumen to actually build a worthwhile background with a whole bunch of really good origin pictures.
Yeah, there's a thing I heard about in a terrible television show I'm addicted to called a tulpa, and they probably did a terrible explanation of what this really means. But in this terrible mythos of this television show, a tulpa allowed you to meditate concentrated energy to create things. And I think that we're inches away from doing that with Slender Man.
Although, to be fair then, if collective belief will in fact induce something and cause something to be real, we'd be dealing with fucking zombie Israelites and fucking meditating fat
Santa Claus and
with a bunch of reindeer soaring through the sky and everyone's fucking general fear of the boogeyman. And it's a good thing that groupthink doesn't create monsters. It's been put forth in a couple different fantasy and sci-fi stuff. Charles Stross does some fun things in his Lovecraftian stuff with power of belief.
Well, and if that were the case, monsters under the bed would probably absolutely exist.
Right, yeah.
Out of children's natural fear of
them. The collective fear, the collective belief in something.
Out of just children. I know adults that are afraid of that shit still.
I walk up my basement steps quickly. I can't help it. There's nothing I can do. When I turn all the lights off down there and I walk upstairs, it happens at a rapid pace. What's your number 5?
Einstein. I gotta throw it to the big nerd. It was probably coming. It seems a little obvious. God bless you. May
the dude is Yusuf
himself bless your mouth. Yeah, Einstein.
He was a domineering, the man defines, intelligentsia for multiple generations, right? He gets thrown around as a byword for being smart or being genius.
Right, we're going on 100 years since he was born.
Yeah, so, he's been around a minute now. I argue he's pretty pseudo-legendary. Again, another figure whose life was thoroughly documented. No mystical, crazy things associated to him, but the way he thought about the world, the way he did math and the things he predicted, he did predict a lot of shit that came true that they just proved after the fact, right? His theories about relativity and light bending and all sorts of different crazy shit. So, yeah, dude, pretty legend, I'd argue for sure.
There are stories, too, about him, like not being able to tie his shoes or clean himself because he's got weird behavior, but perhaps the stories exist. Yeah. And in that air, you have this mythos, again, that we were mentioning before, where you're not sure if what you're hearing is truth or fact, depending on how much research you've done.
Right. For sure.
But I think those are fair.
No,
I don't really have a problem with the list.
No, most I'd agree for sure. And there's all sorts of other people that make a list for sure. Of course, these are just 5 people we grabbed almost pretty much randomly, whatever came across our scrambled minds.
Right, and the bullshit list that we may have scrolled before we did this episode.
Right.
Fourth wall break.
Scroll some lists, look at some other things, make some quick judgments, stuff you agree with, don't agree with. In the uncut here, we'll get into what we consider personal legends.
Right.
Other things that touch a little closer to
home. Well, I did want to tell a personal story because I think it's a riot.
Right. Yeah.
And I think the audience would enjoy it.
Hit it up. I could use it.
We're going to have more personal, like you said, in the uncut, which you can find patreon.com/talkingchaos. $10 and up tiers get the uncut version. If you pay for anything beyond $1, you get early access to episodes also. So you're getting episodes 48 hours ahead of everybody else. But there's a legendary person in my life, to me, always.
Do tell.
His name is Curtis Wisner. I'm totally outing him. If he happens to hear this episode, he'll get a kick out of this because we've lulled about this IRL several times.
There was a lot of acronyms, but I follow you.
I was a sophomore. And when we went to lunch in high school, I think you went to the same one.
I recall, yes.
After lunch was done, we'd sort of all corral into a single hallway, and they'd open doors up.
Mooing and bleeding, yes.
We'd go as like a cattle herd into the next
classroom.
Right, yeah. That would happen, too.
No, yeah. Of course, kids would actually make noises, because it was funny. I was one of them. Yes.
I was, too.
Yeah.
So, right before this happened, my cousin had said something to Curtis, like, or Curtis said something to her, like, I'm gonna pants you. And she goes, do it. I fucking dare you.
I mean, that's game on.
And he did.
Yeah.
And she wasn't wearing anything underneath her pants.
Yeah. I mean, not to throw around an uncomfortable phrase, but she quite literally, in fact, asked for it.
Right, but that was legend.
Sure.
And I will be 70 years old, and I will always remember that happened. So I think there's some red tape involved. There's some I feel like
most people have a pretty legendary pantsing they remember.
Right, but there are events that happen in all of our lives that are legendary. We can talk about events in another episode, but it's more like it's sealed in.
Like that dude's legend. Like he did this. He will forever hold this status. I don't care how far he
was
falls.
Expelled from school for doing this.
That's unfortunate.
And what was even more unfortunate is that it was my cousin that got pants, not a more attractive girl I could fawn over. Instead, I was like, "Yo."
Sure.
But that he did it. It falls into one of your categories of the boldness of character that it would take.
It's a little bit different than being able to do push-ups on one finger.
Not when you're in high school. Now when you're 15, 16 years old. You give a shit less about one finger push-ups, bro.
The threshold for impressive is really low.
Right, Bush. Full Bush in high school, low. In the school.
Yeah, no, a full pantsing, that's pretty intense. Dude, folks, remember, this was 56K internet era we're talking about.
Right, yeah.
Our porn was pixelated.
I wasn't using
There's nothing, dude, come on.
I would have settled for a mental image of my cousin's pants.
Disgusting, but it's absolutely true. No, that's a mild legend.
But no, I had to tell that for folks. What do you think it must be like for these people? Well, you know what? I'm going to hold off on that question because it's actually a follow-up to a different question that I'm going to wait until the uncut to ask.
Word.
So I have 2 questions banked, one right after another. Uncut.
He gives me a look like he's putting bullets into a gun and starts slowly spinning the
They're
cylinder.
Loaded, bro.
2 questions loaded. Word. Snap! And the cylinder locks into place, and he cocks the hammer back and looks at me, and I'm just like, what the fuck?
I'm going to play this game of question roulette after this break. If you guys enjoyed this episode of Talking Chaos, join us next week. Episodes air every Monday, 4 a.m. on your favorite podcast platforms. You guys have a great week. Thank you for joining us.